Registry, and welcome to this webinar on the introduction to renewable gas certificates. During today's webinar, we will explain a bit what certificates are there, for what they can be used, and how to obtain them. It's part of the campaign we're doing for the last months to create more awareness about renewable gas certificates and to inform everybody in the supply chain about the key aspects of these. So the agenda for today is that I will do a very short introduction, and then we'll go to the content. We have a presentation on the introduction of reporting requirements and the voluntary market and national transport targets by Zuzana and Isaac from ACT. I will do an introduction of the current certificates, the proof of sustainability, the guarantee of origin, and the certificate of origin. And then Jay will present how certificates can be used for reporting requirements, voluntary and transport markets. And then Regina will explain how to obtain certificates and renewable gas, in general. And at the end, we'll do a Q&A. There might be some room for 1 or 2 questions after each presentation for some urgent questions, and you can raise your hand or put them in the chat. But to make sure we can finalize all presentations in the next 1.5 hours, we'll leave most of the Q&A to the end. Some household questions. Yes, questions can be put in the chat or by raising your hands. And the presentations will be shared with all of you. So yes, maybe for short introduction, what's ERGaR? So we're the European Renewable Gas Registry. We were founded in 2016. And then the main purpose was to facilitate the cross-border transfer of renewable gas certificates, the certificates and the guarantees of origin. I'll come back later with what it means in practice. And we also developed more towards a forum for the collaboration of renewable gas registries and market participants in Europe. In short, we're a European association for all stakeholders in the renewable gas certification trading. So yes, that creates a very wide range of members. So we have 45 members in 14 European countries and the US. So that are the registries, the appointed issuing bodies, the gas DSOs, the TSOs, biogas associations, traders, and all other major stakeholders, energy companies and consulting companies. So that's a short introduction about ERGaR and the webinar. And then I would like to give the floor to Zuzana and Isaac on introducing the reporting requirements and voluntary markets. I guess, Zuzana, you will share the presentation yourself. So I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, I can share it. Just a second. Okay, is it visible for everyone?
Yes, but not yet in the presentation modes. Yes, now it's perfect.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much, Tim. So yeah, quickly just about us. My name is Zuzana Vrbova. I'm from ACT. So we are environmental solutions provider based in Amsterdam. The first part will be taken by me. So I'm going to be talking about the voluntary initiatives and how they look at biomethane and the use of biomethane certificates. And then in the next part, that will be taken by Isaac, who is our transport solutions expert, and he will be talking about the use of biomethane for transport targets in Europe. So at the beginning, I'll just shortly introduce ACT, who we are. Second part will be about the voluntary corporate targets. I will also shortly talk about the EU disclosure framework. And then in the last part, Isaac's part about transport schemes. So ACT is in the market for 15 years now. We actually quite recently celebrated our 15th birthday. We are in the market to support our clients with their sustainability strategies. So that comes down to sourcing renewable energy for them, both power and renewable gases. We also source carbon credits, and we are carbon project developer. We are also energy efficiency project developer, and we help our clients with their EU ETS obligations. That's kind of in the nutshell about ACT. And talking about the voluntary use of biomethane certificates, generally, we see that the climate action is booming. So these are data from science-based targets about how many companies have signed up with SBTi and how many have recognized targets with SBTi. So you see that the amount of companies that sign up with this initiative to have their sustainability targets assessed by SBTi is growing quite rapidly. That means that more and more corporates are now pursuing some form of sustainability strategy when it comes to reductions of emissions in their scope 1, 2, and 3. And biomethane is not the main solution, but it is one of the solutions. Generally, we can claim biomethane reductions based on biomethane in scope 1, but also to a certain extent in scope 3. And let's just dive straight into it. These are basically the 4 main voluntary initiatives that we often deal with. So I'm just going to shortly introduce them and what they're for. We have the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, which is there basically for measuring. So it gives you the guidelines on how to measure and quantify your emissions in scope 1, 2, and 3. GHG Protocol is the one that came up with this methodology for scoping emissions into these 3 scopes. It is kind of a base for all the other initiatives. So most companies that, let's say, sign up with science-based targets or report through CDP follow the methodology of quantification of their emissions of Greenhouse Gas Protocol. SBTi, so Science-Based Targets Initiative, is really there for setting targets. So once you already have an idea about how to measure your emissions, you can set the targets for midterm or long term. And there are certain conditions that you have to fulfill in order to have these targets confirmed by SBTi. CDP then is there for reporting. So you are basically reporting on your progress using the CDP database and the tools that they provide based on Greenhouse Gas Protocol or other methodology providers. And then we also have RE100. That is a little bit separated, so not really that relevant for biomethane, but it is basically an initiative of CDP, which is there for to guide companies how to set their scope 2 emission targets. So that is really for emissions coming from electricity. And when it comes to biomethane, we have some guidelines that tell us how to report and how to use biomethane certificates. At this point, we don't have much guidance. So there is some wording in the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, some wording in CDP. But at this point, we don't have any of those protocols basically saying that you can use biomethane certificates. What Greenhouse Gas Protocol says on their website is that before they develop a more elaborated guidance document on the use of market-based instruments, companies should get an advice or consult with their auditors. So that means basically that comes down to if you are a company that has their sustainability strategy audited, you should always seek the advice of your auditor whether biomethane certificates is the good solution here. Science-based targets really just refer to Greenhouse Gas Protocol. And CDP has a little bit more detailed wording in their reporting document, in which they say that when gas is sourced from a shared pipeline, then you should be using renewable energy certificates. But that is it. Shortly just about the development on the GHG Protocol side, which is kind of the main document here. They used to have a wording in their Scope 2 guidance document in which they said that you can use this document for your Scope 1 methods. But that was removed in 2019 because they were anticipating this new market-based guidance document. Unfortunately, we don't have the document yet, but GHG Protocol is currently working on it, and the draft should be out hopefully by the end of next year. And talking about the European regulatory guidance, so what I talked about until now, that is really the voluntary side. So companies that have voluntary targets in their scope 1, 2, and 3 are following these international standards. European Union recently started developing their regulatory framework for this. So that is really on the side of regulation. What the EU is focusing at this point is only reporting. So they are not really saying what you have to do or what you cannot do. They're just saying you have to report. So whatever you're doing, if you're using biomethane certificates or any other type of certification, it doesn't say you can or cannot do it, but you have to report on that. The main document here is the CSRD, so Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. That is basically telling companies that they are required to disclose both on the opportunities and risks that are coming from climate change. CSRD used to be applicable only for large listed companies. That has changed recently. It's going to be from 2025, it's going to be applicable also for large unlisted companies and all listed SMEs. So it's going to cover much wider range of companies that it used to. That means that a lot of companies who are also mid-size will need to get ready to report on their sustainability strategies, and will have to start deal with their scope 1, 2, and 3 reductions. So we expect that this is also going to raise the demand for biomethane certificates. ESRS, just quickly, that is a standard for reporting. It's very similar to GHG Protocol. So again, like dividing emissions into scope 1, 2, and 3. It is based on the CSRD, and it is giving you really like a framework how to report about your sustainability strategy. And then we also have a Green Claims Directive that is still in the proposal phase now. That is going to be regulating all claims that are made towards customers that are about climate or sustainability. So let's say if you have a company that claims that they're climate neutral, according to this directive, they will have to show evidence in easily accessible form on why they claim that they are climate neutral. And on the right side and bottom, I just showed an excerpt from the ESRS. So here you can see what companies are required to disclose when it comes to energy consumption. So as you can see, it does not specify how you can source biomass or biogas. It just shows that you have to report on the consumption of biomass, and you have to show the breakdown to biogas, biofuels, or other types of biomass. And now to Isaac.
All right. Good morning, everyone. First off, thanks to Tim and Valentin for hosting us today. My name is Isaac Seto, and along with Zuzana, we are on the research and development team at ACT. I focus more on compliance markets for biomethane, so that includes road transport, industrials for EUTS, and also gas supply quotas. So that's a little bit about my focus. But today I'm going to take you through an overview of national transport targets in Europe, and I'm going to approach this topic with an emphasis on biomethane as a renewable transport fuel, and for targets that have market mechanisms to meet this target. Are you controlling the slides, Zuzana? Yeah. Okay, so to start I guess with the legal context, this really stems from the RED III mandate, Article 25 in particular, which mandates an obligation on fuel suppliers to the transport sector with two ways of meeting these renewable energy targets. The first is a renewable energy share target. So the goal is 29% by 2030, or there's also a choice given to member states to meet this by GHG intensity reductions, which is 14.5% reduction by 2030. And so it's important to note that there are already a number of EU member states that have transposed this law into their national targets. But by May of 2025, next year, we expect that all EU member states have set a transport target. And simultaneously, this should create a market mechanism to trade renewable transport fuel credits, also known as bio tickets, generated from supplying renewable fuels for transport. So maybe to break this down a bit further, what's the difference between these two renewable energy targets and how is this kind of calculated? So the first, I'll walk you through the renewable energy share target. This is basically to calculate an absolute share of renewable energy in the entire transport fuel pool. So, for example, a 10% target would be very simply 1 gigajoule over 10 gigajoules of total energy delivered to the transport sector. So, in a compliance year. So this would be the combination of fossil and bio, which is at 10 gigajoules. So pretty simple, but when we move to the GHG intensity target, this is actually looking at the percent reduction of grams of CO2 of the entire transport fuel supplied. So as an example, we have a top line reference given by RED III, which is called a fossil fuel comparator. And this comparator value is 94 grams of CO2 per megajoule. And so as an example, a 10% reduction target would be around 85 grams of CO2 per megajoule. And this is basically the average carbon intensity of all fuels that are delivered to the transport sector. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay, so what does this mean for biomethane feedstocks and where are they incentivized to deliver based on these targets? Well, as you can see, there is quite a wide variety of feedstocks, feedstock mixes, and also their carbon intensity. So what RED III says about biomethane delivered, renewable gas and biofuels delivered to the transport sector is that they must meet a GHG savings of at least 65% off that 94 grams of CO2. And Zuzana, if you could click the next animation. This gives a GHG savings threshold of 33 grams of CO2. So what this means is for countries that have renewable energy share targets, really the only incentive is to meet this GHG savings threshold. So you can see there are several feedstocks that are at or below this threshold. But if you're going towards more of a market that incentivizes GHG intensity, that's where feedstocks that have a really low carbon intensity like manure are incentivized to deliver to those markets because they're essentially rewarded financially for reducing more carbon. And so just to summarize what biomethane's role in the transport sector is, well, it really is the ability to blend biomethane into fueling stations that use natural gas. So that could be compressed natural gas or liquefied natural gas filling stations. And we already see that there is an existing network of these stations across Europe. Secondly is that guarantees of origin and proof of sustainability are certificates, and I think we have a bit more detail in the next session on these certificates, but these are essentially the certificate that can allocate the renewable energy value to these CNG and LNG filling stations and can notionally blend to create bio LNG and CNG. And lastly is there are a lot of market incentives for providing sustainable, highly sustainable feedstocks to these transport markets. This in Red 3, it's called Annex 9A feedstocks. There's actually a target of 5.5% by 2030. And also, in most cases, these feedstocks are counted twice for the amount of bio tickets that they can generate. So just to give a quick overview of maybe what are the factors that influence the price of bio tickets. Well, we talked about national mandates. Of course, if you have a EU member state that has really aggressive renewable targets, that's going to put a lot of pressure to blend these renewable fuels into the transport sector. Secondly is looking at other types of renewable fuels that are blended. In most cases, biodiesel is the marginal cost fuel in most transport markets. And so this will really, the amount of biodiesel supplied to the market will really determine, I guess, the gap or the window of opportunity for other fuels such as biomethane to make an impact as well. On biomethane alone, you have the production cost and also other characteristics, as I showed with the carbon intensity, but also other characteristics related to the guarantee of origin, such as vintage and also the proof of sustainability and the cost of all that. And then, as I said, there is a multiplier given to advanced feedstocks. In most cases, they are double counted. On the next slide, I'll show you some of the differences between countries. And then also changes in regulation. These market incentives are highly sensitive to changes in policy, and all these targets are dictated by government policy. So whenever that changes, it can definitely have an impact on the price. And lastly is just the equilibrium of the amount of bio tickets that were generated from renewable fuel suppliers versus the amount needed by obligated parties in the market. And so lastly, here's a recap of all the, or I guess a map view. Zuzana, could we get the next slide, please? Thank you. Here is a map view of all the key bio ticket markets and related transport markets in Europe. So to walk you through what this graph is showing, I'll start with the coloring. So on the left-hand side, you'll see that there's the national targets. I have this set out from 2024 to 26 and to 2030. So obviously, in most cases, this target increases for all countries. The next is showing the different advanced multiplier for bio Annex 9A fuels, but also for biomethane. You can see almost in all cases, it's double counted with the exception of Ireland, which gives even more incentive, which is at a 3.4 times counting. And then lastly, this is the penalty. The red is the penalty of non-compliance for missing the amount of renewables you blended into the market. And so you can see that there's different level of penalties across different markets. Obviously, the ones that are by renewable energy share is shown in euros per megawatt hour, and then the ones that reduce based on GHG intensity is in euros per ton of CO2. And I guess going through this map, you can see that Germany and Austria right now are the only countries that have a GHG intensity target. But we expect in 2026 that France and Netherlands will be switching from renewable energy share to a GHG target. That's really all I got for you guys today. Thank you very much for giving us the stage again, ERGaR. And if you would like to know more, if you have any follow-up questions, here's our contact information. Thank you. And I don't know, Tim, if we want to take questions now or maybe at the end.
We can do maybe one or two questions. Maybe I got the comments and also then a question related to that. Does biomethane guarantees of origin are valid to prove the GHG savings?
So typically the GHG savings would be reflected by the proof of sustainability. Really, the guarantee of origin proves disclosure that it came from renewable gas, but most markets require a proof of sustainability to show the GHG savings, and you can actually see the carbon intensity associated with that on the POS.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for explaining this topic in a relatively short presentation. I'm sure that you could present 10 of the different items in much more detail, but yeah, we don't have time for this. This is a really introduction presentation. So yes, it's was said the POS will be the main one for the transport one. And then I see the question, is there a difference between the guarantee of origin and the proof of sustainability? And I'll take that as the nice bridge to my presentation on introducing the current certificates that are available. So again, thank you, Isaac and Zuzana, for this presentation. And yeah, please stay. Maybe in the end, we have some time for more questions and answers. Yes, we'll keep the questions in the chat. So now we go maybe to the current certificates that are available. So there are at the moment several types of certificates or documents, how you want to call it. For we're not going to have a semantic discussion on the word, but you have a guarantee of origin, which is one of them, which is coming from the electricity side. So you have the power guarantees of origin for quite some time. And it's based on Article 19 of the REDS. And the main purpose is consumer disclosure, to show that to the user of the biomethane or the other gas, renewable gas, that they used this renewable energy. And how does it work? It's based on the verification system where the rules are set in the standard EN 16325, which should be probably or maybe adopted next year. And they're issued by a government-appointed issuing body, a national registry, like, you know, for example, Vertiser in the Netherlands or Energinet in Denmark. And they issue these guarantees of origin, and then afterwards they're traded in a book and claim fashion. So that means the guarantee of origin, the certificate, is traded irrespective of the physical flow of the gas. This is one, and we come back to it later, but I start with a very brief introduction of those. Then you have the proof of sustainability based on Article 25 to 31 of the RED, and the main purpose is to use it for target counting. So as mentioned by Isaac already, member states have targets in the EU legislation, and they can only use biomethane with a proof of sustainability. And this is not just that it's biomethane or renewable hydrogen. It needs to meet sustainability criteria that are set in the legislation. So it's just an extra layer on top of the guarantee of origin. The guarantee of origin says, okay, it's biomethane. I mean, you can prove that you use biomethane. The proof of sustainability shows, okay, this is biomethane, but it also meets a lot of other sustainability requirements, for example, related to the feedstock. The way of trading is also completely different. It's there are some national databases, but at the moment it can be sent just as a certificate together with the gas by PDF document. Again, we'll come back to it later. And the main principle is it's a mass balancing principle. So the idea is that there should be a clear link between the biomethane or the renewable gas that's produced and the trading of the proof of sustainability. And then we go to the other certificates, and there are also certificates based on national legislation that were in place before there were guarantees of origin for renewable gases, or they're in countries where there's no guarantee of origin, for example, the UK. So the main one to be known is the Dana Biogas Registry in Germany. So it was already in place before. There's a geo registry in Germany, which probably only comes in 1.5 to 2 years. So it's based on national legislation, and they look a bit similar to the guarantees of origin. There's some differences. I'm aware of it. Sometimes you need to prove mass balancing requirements. Sometimes the lifetime is different, but generally you can say they're more similar to the guarantee of origin. So these are the three main types of certificates, where the certificate of origin is kind of an umbrella term for a lot of national pieces of legislation. So how does it work in practice for the guarantee of origin? So it depends a bit. There are small differences in the countries, but generally the producer makes a product declaration, or the grid operator provides injection data to the national registry. So there's a national registry in each country, and then the producer gets in his account, it's like a bank account, he gets a guarantee of origin for some certain number of megawatt hours, and it says, okay, these are the criteria that are of the characteristics of this biomethane. And then this GO can be traded on completely separate from the registry. And if it's sold to GO, it can be transferred just like money on a bank account to another account for the GO, to a trader account or an end user account. And in the end of the process, so it can be traded more, it can be either cancelled for an end user, or cancellation statement is issued, and then the end user can claim that he used the guarantee of origin, can claim that it used the biomethane. So that's why it's called book and claim. If it's not sold on time, the GO expires after 18 months. It can be traded up to 12 months after production, and then after 18 months it expired and cannot be used anymore. So this is one thing. And then I mentioned in the beginning that I would explain a bit more what's ERGaR doing, the facilitating of cross-border transfers. And here we show that there are several registries in different countries, but sometimes parties want to sell biomethane stiff, or like a guarantee of origin, from country A to country B. For example, from the Netherlands to Denmark. And then there's a possibility to have bilateral agreements, but if you need to have bilateral agreements with all different parties, it gets more complicated and you need to have technical rules. So here ERGaR comes in and provides a centralized hub to transfer these certificates. So if you send it from the Netherlands to Denmark, you would send it first from the Dutch registry to ERGaR, and then from ERGaR to Denmark. So at the moment we have ERGaR, but we also have another parallel scheme from AIB, the Association of Issuing Bodies. They're doing this already longer for electricity guarantees of origin, and they're also started earlier this year with gas guarantees of origin. So at the moment, there are some countries that are a member of ERGaR, some countries are a member of AIB. So within these networks, you can trade, but it's not possible to trade within these, in between these certificates hubs. Of course, it doesn't make sense. So we're have ongoing discussions on cooperation with AIB, and we have to solve some technical and practical issues. So this is the trading of guarantees of origin. So maybe a bit more explanation what's ERGaR and who is a member of ERGaR. So ERGaR scheme was launched in 2021. And now we do around 3 terawatt hours per year over the system. And at the moment, there are 6 system participants. So that's the UK, Netherlands, Germany, Austria, Denmark, and Slovakia. And then some of them are real guarantee of origin registries, like the Netherlands, Denmark, and Slovakia. And some are based on national legislation, like the UK, the Germany, where the Dana Biogas Registry, and in Austria. So they create some complications to which country you can send what, but generally it should be possible to send it to Germany, which is the main market. And then we have some other countries that are interested in joining, like Ireland, Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania, France, and also Switzerland is planning to join on the 1st of January. Yeah, so here are the statistics. So it's like you can see it's a growing market, and yeah, I think we're about 3 terawatt hours of transfers for 2024. That was the guarantee of origin. Then we have proof of sustainability, and here is a picture of proof of sustainability from ICC, one of the voluntary schemes. So how does it work? So this document, if you issue this for a certain consignment of biomethane, it shows that this biomethane meets the sustainability criteria. And at the same time, the greenhouse gas emissions, you see at the bottom of the document, greenhouse gas emissions are calculated for this biomethane. And this is useful, for example, for the transport sectors in certain countries as presented by Isaac. So also when it has this document, it can be used to count to, for the renewable energy goals of certain member states. And it needs to be mass balanced. There's a lot of discussion, and I won't go into detail what exactly means mass balanced, but there should be a link. I think that's the main aspect. Who can issue these certificates is the producer of the biomethane, and he can only do this after he's been recognized or certified by an EU-recognized voluntary scheme. There's some like ICC, RedCert, 2BS, Better Biomass, they're the most known ones for biomethane. And the moment it's certified, it can issue this, prepare this PDF document itself. Then it can be traded, but also only traded with traders that are recognized by an EU voluntary scheme. So this trader also need to be audited. And then afterwards, this PDF document can be sent by email across all borders. There's one harmonized EU market. And since the end of last year, no capacity bookings are required on the EU gas grid. But this is the basis of the POS. I see a quick question. Say anything about subsidies? No, that's part of the guarantee of origin, not of the POS. So this is a bit the situation how it is now. I briefly mentioned the union database, because the union database, I guess many of you have heard about it, and it will replace the current system of tracking and tracing the ownership of the proof of sustainability. It's not a trading platform, I want to say that. And also mention that there are many questions still open. So a major disclaimer on the presentation. It was supposed to be operational 21st of November, so last week, but it's still not completely functional. So this is a bit the timeline is being developed. It should have been operational last week, and by the 21st of May next year, the legislation, the RED 3, needs to be transposed by the member states, and probably union data, or maybe the union database needs to be mandatory by then. However, that's a big question mark. I won't say anything about this in this webinar, but we need more clarity on when the union database will be mandatory. So what covers the union database? That's of interest as well. So it's the proof of sustainability, and every guarantee of origin and a proof of sustainability. That's supposed to be traded by the union database as well. So if biomethane has a proof of sustainability, it needs to be traded via the union database and not anymore via the national registries. That's the long-term goal. Of course, biomethane, which is only a guarantee of origin, can still be traded via the national registries. How does it work? It's quite similar to the guarantee of origin registry. So the proof of sustainability and potentially the guarantee of origin are included in the producer accounts of the union database, and then it's transferred from one party to another, to the trader account and a consumer account, and then it can be cancelled. That's a general concept. We don't have time to go into details. We also don't know a lot of details, but this is just a general idea. So this is my part on the presentation, on the general introduction of the certificates. I see on the chat there are a lot of discussions are going. Yes, there are a lot of things unclear. There are differences in the details, but that's not for today. Today, we really want to discuss the basics. And then if you have time, we can have some discussions at the end of the webinar. So if there are no other urgent questions on this topic, I would like to give the floor to Jay from STX on how certificates can be used for reporting requirements, voluntary, and the transport markets. Will you share it yourself, Jay?
Yeah, I'll share my deck. Yeah, cool. Hey guys, hello. Jay from STX here. Let me just share my screen quickly. Can everybody see this introduction slide? Oopsie.
Yes, we see it.
The introductions to biomethane certificates. Does everyone see that clearly? Cool. Okay. So, yeah. So my name's Jay. I'm a trading analyst and team lead of the gas analysis team at STX. STX is a trading company. We focus entirely on renewable energy products. So just this slide here just shows a bit of a high-level overview about what we do as a company. We're over 500 people. Geographically, we're global in our coverage. We have offices around the world. We trade with thousands of companies globally, and we work across the renewables complex. So that's including biofuels, renewable gas, power geos, carbon emissions, voluntary compliance, etc. So we have quite a broad portfolio of products. And of course, yeah, we've been in this business since the beginning of the ETS, basically. So we're a sort of a long-standing player in the renewables space, headquartered in Amsterdam. So the biomethane desk has been around for over 10 years now, and starting in Europe, but also in the US subsequently. And in the previous year, we traded around 5 terawatt hours of biomethane certificates. So quite a substantial proportion of the market. The European market is around 50 terawatt hours of production, to put it into context. Yeah, we have coverage across most of the European countries, certainly the ones that are active in biomethane. Just a real sort of high level point to make. Biomethane can be produced by lots of different types of feedstocks. Mostly it's a waste market, but there's a lot of crop production as well. And essentially these different organic inputs are able to be transformed at a biogas digester and then upgrade into biomethane, most of which is injected into the gas grid. And then the GOs and the POSs are issued accordingly, and those volumes are then delivered through the mass balancing process. So biomethane, as with natural gas, it's the same molecule, CH4. Biomethane is quite a diverse product in terms of its uses. Of course, it's primarily gas is used for heating and industrial purposes, but there's also growing consumption in the transport market as CNG or LNG, and it can be used for electricity generation, and it can be used as a chemical feedstock, so for the production of methanol, for example. So it has quite a large range of use cases, and each of those use cases is quite unique in the market structure and the regulations. Some have stricter or higher environmental targets than others, and the drivers and the use cases are therefore quite different. And this can affect pricing quite significantly. It affects which products are eligible. And there's many sort of sub rules, and each country has its own way of mandating these different consumption sectors. So some are growing quicker than others. Some will come in more as RED 3 is implemented. So there's a lot of change. There's a huge amount of regulation around this market. It's very much a regulatory driven market. But yeah, so there's a lot of nuance in the paperwork. How those GOs are issued, how the POSs are issued affects the value quite considerably. Just one point I wanted to make, which is some countries have biomethane production subsidies, others don't, and therefore, yeah, you have quite considerably different quality of the paperwork, the environmental paperwork, the GOs, as a result. So the difference between a subsidized and an unsubsidized product is quite important. Just wanted to show actually an interesting point around the subsidies is that even though the subsidy levels change, and some countries, as I said, don't even have subsidies, many countries don't have subsidies at the point of production. Those that do have also, you can see here, had pretty sort of sustained growth in their generation of biomethane. So subsidies are effective at getting production online. That's quite clearly demonstrated by the countries such as here highlighted, the UK, France, and Denmark, who have consistently provided production subsidies. They also have consistently grown in their market size. The countries that don't have subsidies, it's not that the biomethane is ultimately the biomethane is subsidized, but it's subsidized in a different way at the point of consumption. So you can look at it in different ways, but biomethane is always more expensive to produce than natural gas. So it does require a financial kickback at some point in the process. That can either be done at the production immediately upon injection, or that's done later on when the consumption is claimed. And another important point about feedstock, which was mentioned already by our friends at ACT, is that waste and crop have, of course, one important component in some markets is the carbon intensity, which can be much higher for things like crop, where the CO2 level is still around, say, 20 to 30 grams. And then it gets lower as you go to sort of higher quality feedstocks, manure being the one which is most effective at reducing carbon emissions on a net basis. And there are some schemes which value that and others that do not. So there is a whole point around finding the most sort of optimal home for different types of products, and that creates quite a broad range of pricing in some instances. So just a few points to highlight on qualities. Subsidized and unsubsidized, as I mentioned, the subsidies refer to the grid-injected feed-in tariffs. These feed-in tariffs typically, as you saw in a previous slide, can be quite high, and they're there to ensure that the plants are essentially profitable. They also still receive the natural gas price as well when they inject into the grid. And then they also sell the GOs, and if they have a POS, they can also sell the POS. And collectively, that results in the revenue for the plants. You have gas, subsidy, GO, and POS. And then of course you even have the digestate, which is a byproduct of the production at the biomethane digester. So, and that's used as a substitute for fertilizers. So that is one important distinction when looking to source biomethane. You need to understand whether or not you actually need subsidized or unsubsidized. What's the use case that you have in mind? Typically, the unsubsidized products go for transport, and the subsidized products go for voluntary or some of the other compliance markets, such as ETS. So the ETS is a European-wide system, of course. It's the carbon market, and it's the biomethane inclusion is essentially sort of legislated by what's called the MRR, which essentially defines the minimum criteria required for ETS use in installations that have an EUA exposure. So those installations can buy biomethane certificates. They must be certified, and they must achieve the minimum CO2 reduction targets outlined in the Renewable Energy Directive. But if they do achieve those things, then at least if the country in question is authorized, just follows the MRR, then they will be sufficient. Some countries set higher requirements. So again, it's on a national level to ensure that you're following the correct regulation for your specific market. So unsubsidized production doesn't receive a feed-in tariff by definition, but it allows it to be used in transport markets. Those transport markets then typically pay a higher price for the certificate and the POS because they're not subsidized, and they're actually competing with completely different fuels, which is biofuels, which are also not subsidized at the point of production. So it creates a level playing field between biomethane and biofuels, which means that the green value price is higher, and it's ultimately linked to the ticket prices that Isaac was talking about earlier. There are many domestic schemes as well, and those eligibility criteria vary quite considerably. Some, for instance, will not allow imports, or you will require a domestic certification that's not necessarily ISCC or any of those other RED voluntary standards. But then they also still have they still provide the right kind of information and do an audit essentially. But yeah, most member states don't currently have a production subsidy for biomethane. So many may introduce them in the future. As I saw, you showed you in the previous slide, subsidies do bring production capacity online. So it is advised for member states to introduce subsidies if they want to grow their biomethane market quickly. But then they have to consider how they want to incorporate the demand picture. Then certification is an other important criteria that's of biomethane certificate qualities. Certification is the POS essentially. A GO is always issued for a biomethane certificate, that is the certificate, and then a certified biomethane certificate, which is maybe a slightly confusing way of putting it, is one that has received an additional audit from ISCC, REDSA, or one of the other RED compliant voluntary standards. And those then issue another piece of paperwork, as Tim discussed earlier. Those then enable the biomethane certificates to be used in compliance markets and have more scope. Voluntary consumers also sometimes buy certified product because it contains more information. It's a higher quality. You can see the carbon intensity, things like this. So that just gives a bit more certainty to the buyer that they have received what they want. But a GO is still a biomethane product and still has a minimum RED standard. So the GHG savings must be at least aligned with the RED. So uncertified is primarily used by voluntary buyers because it has less granular details, and most compliance markets require certification. And then, as I said, some countries have their own domestic certifications, such as Italy and Germany, which typically, when they have domestic markets that have those domestic certifications, they exclude imports for those specific uses. And then another key criteria is feedstock, which we talked about a minute ago. Crop is typically considered lower quality because, of course, the European direction is to become more circular, and using wastes in biomethane digesters is better for waste management as well. So it's considered more sustainable. It doesn't compete with energy and food and feed crops. And then equally, the quality does. Some markets do specify what is not allowed in terms of feedstock. So not all feedstocks are eligible for all markets. And in the case of transport, typically waste is used because it gains multipliers or higher ticket values than crop. There is also this Annex 9 in RED2, which defines the different hierarchy of waste qualities. And most biomethane that's produced from waste is Annex 9A, so it is already eligible for the higher quality transport markets. And then manure has the sort of added bonus of a very low carbon intensity, which in those GHG reduction markets gains additional value. Just wanted to show quickly how we see at the moment gas decarbonisation. So, of course, the voluntary markets are primarily around heating, and that could be on the retail basis or industrial heating. But basically, if we look at just the total European gas demand, which is primarily around heating and industrial uses, you can see here up to 2024, you can see that biomethane has provided quite a thin quite a small amount of that European gas demand. We do expect gas demand to decline, and that's in line with the European objectives, although we're quite conservative about how far we think that will go down. And we do expect biomethane inclusion to increase, but you can see it's still relatively small in our forecast, at least to 2030. We don't really think that the biomethane market will grow to the scale of the Repower EU target of 35 BCM, although it would be great if we are proven wrong in that. But for now, we still think by 2030 the gas market will be heavily fossil, but at least biomethane is growing, and it would be, if we see more mandates coming through following on from RED III, then we would expect to see potentially this pace to be quicker. But we're quite conservative in our view at this point. But you can see in the heating mix, actually, and this is Eurostat data, you can see in the heating mix that biomethane is still quite a small part of the overall composition of European heating, although it's a growing part of the renewable component, which is the right-hand chart. Primarily, actually, wood pellets make up the bulk of the heating market, of the renewable component of the heating market at the moment, and that is something that would, of course, be expected to maybe decline a little bit or stay flat, but it's not really being incentivized to grow any further at this stage. And they're looking to push other products, including biomethane, biogas, and then things like heat pumps. So biomethane is an important part of the heating mix. The RED III targets are supporting the growth of the heating and cooling sector's renewable composition and the industrial sector, but we haven't really seen that come through on the national level regulations yet. And that's where the market really is sort of properly governed. The European directives set the kind of the high level aspirations, but each member state is responsible for issuing their own law, and they ultimately need to implement RED III in a way which actually creates this transition. So we're hoping to see RED III being implemented across the member states in good time. The official deadline is May 2025, but it doesn't seem likely that any, or at least not many, member states will actually introduce RED III properly by then. But hopefully in 2026 and beyond, we'll see more of those member states introducing the RED III schemes, which should push biomethane quite heavily in the coming years. Just quickly on the biofuel sector, this data is a bit old now, but this is also still from Eurostat. You can see that biofuels is predominantly, it's predominantly a liquid market from FAME and HVO and ethanol. Of course, diesel is the biggest component of the European fuel mix. And yeah, of course, this composition needs to also change to fulfill the RED targets, which are quite high. 29.5% energy mix, energy content by 2030, or 14.5% of the CO2 reductions needs to be achieved, which is considerably higher than current targets. So that should drive further introduction of biofuels. And as you can see here, it's primarily, as I said, the liquid biodiesels and gas and ethanol, with biomethane making up a pretty small component of the mix, and EV as well. But these are growing, and they're growing quickly. So that should hopefully drive further demand for biomethane in the biofuel mix, as you can also see here. And this is an average, because many markets in transport markets don't factor the CI don't value the CI in the transport mix. Some do, some don't. But as on average, we estimate it's still negative in terms of the CO2 emissions of the biofuels in the biomethane in the road transport market, because some countries do value that CI. But over time, as more countries introduce a CO2 system, biomethane will be increasingly interesting for those markets, because it's very effective at reducing CO2 emissions compared to the other biofuels. As you can see, it's the only one that achieves a negative footprint consistently. EV has a relatively high emissions profile because it's still taking power from the grid, but it has a lot of multipliers, which also incentivizes EV. And as the renewable component of the power generation mix increases, that will also improve the CO2 intensity measures of EVs. So what are the barriers to using certificates at the moment? Well, a key one from the voluntary perspective is the GHG Protocol, who is still a bit ambiguous on its position around biomethane. And we're hoping to hear some sort of more concrete guidance from them in the coming weeks or months. It's important that they align, I think, with the wider EU approach, especially because the GHG Protocol is actually embedded in the CSRD. So it really does matter from a voluntary perspective what the GHG Protocol says. They do seem to be perhaps open to making it a bit clearer on the use of market-based instruments, but it's still a bit of a debate at the moment. But hopefully we see some more clarity on GHG Protocol's position. CDP is another important voluntary reporting system, and they do accept biomethane certificates, so that's supportive of the voluntary case. But we'd hope that GHG Protocol and as a result SBTi align more with the sort of the CDP and European Commission's approach. In transport markets, some countries prohibit the imports at the moment. This may be opened up more over time, and probably more so as their union database is eventually introduced. That should make it easier to trade across border, especially for these sort of compliance markets. But yeah, as transport markets were initially designed for liquid biofuels, as I mentioned earlier, they don't allow subsidized product. So this is one of the areas where subsidized and unsubsidized really diverge. And as a buyer of this market, it's important to be aware of this, and you're probably going to be looking for subsidized production in most cases. And another important topic that's been quite relevant lately is national statistics reporting for the energy shares. This is something that's not very well harmonized at the moment, but that's ultimately causing some concerns around the trade of product and ultimately creating some barriers, because if a country reports it to the national statistics of their production to the national statistics of that country, then the export of that product should then not be used for compliance markets. So this is an ongoing debate about how to manage that better and ensure that the transfer of POSs and GOs is not resulting in two reports of the national statistics in different member states. Just a quick slide on the recognition of biomethane. As I mentioned, GHG Protocol doesn't provide clear guidance. CDP does accept for Scope 1. SBTi adheres to GHG Protocol, so it's important that the GHG Protocol aligns. And the RE100 climate group doesn't really look at biogas at the moment. It's more of a renewable power system. And just one final, I've kind of touched on both of these things. RED 3 is getting introduced now across the member states, and this should drive a lot more on the heating and industrial demand. Of course, transport markets as well should grow, but it should create a whole new raft of law across the member states, which would be very supportive of this market. And the UDB, which is Tim also mentioned briefly, will be introduced hopefully and properly in the next year or so, and that will allow for more better traceability of the POSs and ensure that the national statistics reporting is done more effectively to just help the growth of this market. So there's a bit of a barrage of information. Thank you for your time. I think I'm already running over a little bit, so I'm just going to stop sharing now. Of course, if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Jay, for this introduction in the biomethane market. So yeah, we now kind of discussed why you could want to buy renewable gas or biomethane. As in the first presentation, what certificates are available, and then now how the market works. So if you're now convinced you want to buy renewable gas or renewable gas certificates, we also want to present how this can be done. And for that, I would like to give the floor to Regina.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Will you also share your own slides?
Yes, I will. Just a second.
So please go ahead with the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Hi, everyone again. My name is Regina, and thanks, Tim, for the invitation to talk about how to obtain biomethane certificates in Europe today. I think we heard a lot about biomethane so long, and there's many different details and complexity coming with it. So I'm introducing you to the topic how to obtain biomethane and trying to sum up a little what we learned earlier today in the other presentations. I work for a company called BMP Greengas. We are a leading biomethane trader in Europe, and an expert in green gases. We have a very strong focus on the German market, but we trade internationally. Our headquarters is based in Munich with currently over 60 employees, and the company is a 100% subsidiary of VNG Handel und Vertrieb. We manage a large and diversified portfolio of different biomethane qualities, and we understand ourselves as a 360-degree partner providing professional and personal consultancy for our clients. Biomethane is our core product, including all relevant services around it, so transportation, balancing group management, registry, verifications, or anything coming with it, basically. So how is the production side and the consumption side being linked? The trader is the intermediary between purchasing and sales activities, between biomethane producers and end consumers. There's different areas of application today, and we learned that earlier already. We also differentiate between the key sales channels, that is the industry sector, the mobility sector, heating, and power. And as you also learned earlier along Jay's presentation, there is no single biomethane product. There's many different qualities and different criteria, such as the feedstock type, the certification, the CI score, the country of origin, and all of that define different biomethane products and different prices. The agricultural feedstock is today in Europe the majority share of feedstock types, but the market experiences a strong shift towards waste and residues for various reasons. Biomethane plays a key role in industrial settings, specifically in energy-intensive areas such as the glass, the food, and the chemical industry. It can be used as process gas for heat and electricity generation and in the material utilization. It fulfills sustainability targets and emission obligations, and we experience that biomethane creates a competitive advantage, especially in the industry sector, since the demand of end consumers towards green products is growing, and it develops a key mechanism for companies to go green with biomethane. The biggest driver, though, for industrial settings is first the reduction of CO2 under the European Emission Trading Scheme and the emission reduction along the corporate carbon footprint, product carbon footprint, so the scopes consideration of 1, 2, and 3. Now, how is biomethane used in the industry today, and what benefits provides it? There's different delivery models. We've learned already there's a book and claim model, there's a VTP and PEP delivery. So whenever biomethane is transported via the virtual trading point or to a specific physical exit point. Biomethane is a very flexible and versatile product. It can be blended with natural gas up to 100%. And this way it is used either for single product lines in the industry, or it can be blended with natural gas in individual steps over a certain delivery period. The integration is possible at short notice, and basically there's no changes, no technical changes required, since biomethane is injected into the European gas grid and it's delivered through the same infrastructure. Now, how is biomethane used in Europe, and what purpose drives industrial companies to use biomethane? There is no single set of rules on what type of claims customers can make when they purchase biomethane certificates. We've learned about the benefits of biomethane as such, and in Europe we differentiate two key market mechanisms. One is the voluntary markets, and second is the compliance markets. To give you a sample on how it works in Germany we have both mechanisms. There's companies that use biomethane voluntarily to show they use renewable gases and make the appropriate claims in their emission and sustainability reports. And for this, there's two frameworks in Europe that companies use as the key guideline. We learned that already today. It's SBTi and the Greenhouse Gas Protocol being those two guidelines. At present, both organizations are in process of developing clear rules on the use of biomethane to reach climate targets and calculate the GHG emissions. At the same time, in Germany, there's also a compliance market, and with several legal mechanisms that define biomethane as an option to comply with national renewable energy targets. So, for example, in the power and in the heating sector, but also in the mobility sector, and as mentioned already, in the industry sector. In the industry sector, biomethane can be used to reduce emissions in the national and in the European emission trading scheme. Especially in the industry, we see a continuously growing demand for biomethane all over Europe for both reasons, voluntarily defined targets as well as the European emission trading compliance targets. Different markets means different qualities and requirements, and this also means there's different qualities in the specific sectors. Certificates are a proof of compliance with legal obligations such as renewable energy and emission reduction targets. Taking Germany again as a sample here, Germany legally allows the import of biomethane for all listed sectors, so the industry, the heating and the mobility sector. And we've also learned there's two types of biomethane certificates, the proof of sustainability and the guarantees of origin. And alongside these, we also have national certificates in countries such as Germany, Austria and the UK. If you look at the slide, you'll see it's a complex setup on what is required in which sector. The industry sector, here we can reduce emissions under both emission trading schemes, where proof of sustainability via NABISI are used and a maximum CI score is required. In the heating sector in Germany, COOs via the German DENA Biogas Registry are required and various feedstock types are possible. But all those feedstock types need to be DENA certified and there needs to be an audit report. In the mobility sector, we also have proofs of sustainability that are traded via NABISI. This is a requirement here. Double counting is possible if the feedstock is advanced, and the pricing is basically influenced by the CI score of biomethane. And as part of the efforts to decarbonize, some member states, some European member states, including France, Austria, Ireland, and Portugal, they are preparing and setting national biomethane blending options. And there's also some member states that acknowledge the use of biomethane under the European emission trading scheme as of today. They have implemented this international law already. And sample countries here are the UK, the Netherlands, Denmark, Italy, Germany, and France. So some are already there, and hopefully the rest will follow as soon as possible. Now, how to obtain those certificates? Almost all biomethane certificates are being traded in over-the-counter markets and can be purchased in many different ways with different benefits. Yes, there is the option to have a direct connection to your own biomethane plant, but in most cases it will be inefficient or impossible to receive renewable gas this way. It is basically rarely practical to install and operate a biomethane plant on or close to your point of consumption, and the grid injection and consumption still needs to allow a continuous matching of supply and demand. And building a plant, your own plant, means investing into an asset and continuously operating it. This brings certain risks coming with it, meaning financial risks, but also default risks from a technical and feedstock perspective. And you've seen that there is a very complex changing law landscape all over Europe. So this is quite a challenge to monitor this with this model. Biomethane certificates can also be purchased directly from producers, biomethane producers. This might mitigate some of the risks, but still means quite a high investment of time and resources in search, bargaining, and certification. And there's still a certain default risk. So the technical risk and the feedstock risk. So for example, a biomethane plant that has technical issues and can no longer produce, this might result into a certain risk on end consumer off-taker side. And then the third option is using intermediaries like traders and consultancies, means avoiding those key risks and sourcing issues, since you have the option to rely on the portfolio of such an intermediary, and at the same time you benefit from a long-standing market expertise. And our approach at BMP Greengas is we collect the requirements of our customers and we then find the best fitting biomethane solution. Obtaining and trading biomethane certificates within Europe requires cross-border trading, and that the European market allows the import of biomethane. This way, a connection between the production location and the end consumer or the end user can be made in all European countries with the aim to find the best solution and the best product for the end user. There are several opportunities of doing so, but they require certain changes of legislation still. So, for example, the ongoing opening of the German markets, of the German fuel market for imported biomethane. Today, there is, as Tim mentioned, there is cross-border schemes like the ERGaR COO scheme and the AIB gas scheme that relatively easy allow a GO transfer from one registry to the other if there's an agreement between the registries. We would say overall, the European market shows that there is a strong desire for a fully open market that allows transfers between all registries, and also the trading of proof of sustainabilities will hopefully significantly change with the UDB being in place, technically being in place since 21st of November, but as you've heard today, there's still many question marks, and we need to see how the operational part will look like. So our offer at BMP to you is we're working together for a green future. So if there's anything we can assist you with, please let us know. We're here to help. I've tried to sum that up a little to avoid double information, Tim. So thanks very much for the time, and any questions, please let us know.
Thank you for giving this presentation and explaining how to obtain these certificates. We have 10 minutes left, and we have some time for Q&A. I see some questions in the question and answers. I want to briefly mention that we'll focus on the basic questions. So this is an introduction webinar. We're not going into details of how mass balancing works. We are aware that there are different approaches in the markets, there are different interpretations. We understand that, for example, ICC is planning to update their guidance. The Union database might change things. I think for the people that are relatively new to the market, it's just important to know that there generally there should be mass balance. What mass balance means in practice, essentially there are different interpretations, and this is room for a lot of discussions. So then we go to the questions I found in the Q&A. And then the first one is, this proof of sustainability document is the same for natural gas. There's no proof of sustainability for natural gas. It's only for renewable gases. I hope I answered that question. Then can a feedstock supplier also buy a certificates? From Gerard Gosselink, if that means you want to buy guarantee of origin for your production, or so it's normally you buy a certificate or proof of sustainability with the biomethane. So if you're a feedstock and you want to use it for your own energy consumption, that's possible. If that's not answered the question, either raise your hand or put it in the chat. Gerard. Can I allow my... Yes, now you should be able, if you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
Yes. Yeah, Tim, thank you for the good presentations. It was very interesting. My question is, we have some suppliers of feedstock, for example, big cooperative like Cargill, and we are taking products from them to biogas plants. So, and they are asking us, is it able to buy certificates for delivering product to biogas plants, and the certificates for using in their own company for the scope 1, 2, and 3 registration?
Good question. How I understand it, but maybe one of the other speakers can correct me, is that it's possible, but it's kind of two different transactions. One is the transaction, okay, you provide the feedstock, and then there's another transaction that you can buy the certificate for the biomethane.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's how I understand it. It's possible, but it's possible like any other company can buy the biomethane certificates. Then I get to how are proof of sustainability CI scores used to calculating the EU ETS allowances saved? I have been getting info from many traders that the price is not linear, but I can see why a more negative CI POS should not have proportionally more value than a less negative one. Is there anyone that wants to answer this question from the presenters?
Yeah, I can take this one. So basically, this the CO2 value of an in the ETS is just set to 0, irrespective of the actual CI of the POS. So it doesn't actually matter what the CO2 footprint is, as long as it's RED compliant. And that level will increase. I think it's set to 70% now, and next year it'll be from 80% CO2 reductions against the reference value, which is the natural gas CO2 emissions value. So that's a lower number than the transport one of 94.1. I think it's around 80. So it basically means that if you have a minus 100 or plus 20, it achieves the same reductions on the ETS perspective. So your high performing CI product doesn't gain any additional premium in the ETS at the moment.
Thank you, Jay. Then a question related to that. If you use uncertified GOs, what CIs should be used?
Yeah, I can have a crack at that one as well. I mean, in my perspective, you should just assume that at least it achieves the RED standard, which it must do to actually be issued a GO from an RED issuing body. So in absence of an actual CI value, which is one of the main reasons why a certification from a voluntary standard is valued higher, or at least one of the big benefits of having that certification. So without that, you don't actually have an audit done on the CI of the product. So you can't really assign it a CI with any confidence, apart from that it must achieve at least the RED standard.
Thank you. Question, can biomethane produced outside the EU certified by, for example, ICC be used in any EU markets? For now, yes, if you follow the rules. With the Union database, it will become more complicated. It needs to be some kind of a recognized mass balancing system or a segregated supply chain to use biomethane from outside the EU in the EU. So negotiations are ongoing. Hard to give a clear estimate on this. So can you elaborate on the fact that double counting is possible? I don't know to what that refers. If you want to provide more details on that, you can raise your hands. And another question, maybe also to one of the speakers, why the country of origin is an additional price? Anyone wants to answer that?
Yeah, I
don't
can
know
take
which
that.
part. Yeah.
That often comes down to the state subsidy. So some countries have set up systems that give subsidy to the production of biomethane, and they set it at different levels. So could be higher, could be lower. So that's you can source biomethane from countries where it's subsidized and it's cheaper, or where it's unsubsidized and then it's going to be more expensive.
Thank you. Another one, is there a concern that reducing the mass balancing requirements will conflict with attempting to gain increased recognition under the ECG reporting schemes like the GHG Protocol? That's difficult to say. The discussions are going in the technical working group. For example, for electricity, no mass balancing is required. But it's a key topic also for debt markets. It's always an extra asset if there's mass balance in the discussions. But yeah, it's a very good question, but difficult to give a clear answer on this. I think then we did all the questions from the Q&A. I see if there are any. As I understand it, you can use the geo against ETS if you use and don't need a POS in this context. Is that correct? My understanding is that you both need a proof of sustainability and a guarantee of origin for ETS. But if that's wrong, please correct me.
Just to add to that, the MRR is the document which was released, I think, in 2022 or thereabouts, or 21. Basically, it defines the rules of the ETS. It's a regulation, which means it's just law across the member states, and it basically says that you need to have a certification. So that would be a POS.
Okay, thank you. Then I have a final question. Maybe how can offer and demand meet on the market, except of using traders or brokers? I'll let all of you three to answer this one, and then we'll close the session. If you want to respond to this.
So what was the question?
How can offer and demand meet on the market?
Oh, you just call SDX.
I'm not sure the same answer that Regina, Zuzana, and Isaac will give.
So my answer would be so today this market is developing a lot. There is nowadays platforms that connect the demand and the supply, but the most important part is the consultancy is missing at this stage. And the consultancy, as you learned today, is a very key in a very complex setup we talk about when we talk about biomethane. So from our sense, the best place to meet is a trader, where that connects, as I said, that connects the production and the end consumer side, and additionally gives the advice and the consultancy you need to find your way through this jungle of legislation, laws, and regulations. So yeah, feel free to call us.
Thank you, Isaac.
Yeah, Tim, I would just echo the fact that I think Regina pointed out this is we're dealing with OTC markets, over the counter, so there's oftentimes not much price transparency on, say, an exchange for biomethane. So that requires market intermediaries such as ACT and the rest of here. I think what ACT provides is kind of end-to-end solutions for sustainability. So that could be biomethane across the board from carbon and also EU ETS. So I think it's a need for market intermediaries as well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again, all presenters, for giving a presentation. Everybody for your attention. I hope we give you a short introduction to it. I guess you realized we only scratched on the surface of this topic. There are many topics that could require a full day discussion. If you want some more information on renewable gas certificates, we have a website where you can find this more information. And if you're more interested in diving deeper in it, we organize 2 events as ERGaR. On the 12th of February, we all organize an eWorld Biomethane networking event, so at the eWorld conference in Essen. Everybody interested in biomethane will be invited. Details will be confirmed. We can follow on our link page. We can maybe put also something in the follow-up email. And 8th of 9th April is the REX market meeting. It's a big conference focused on renewable power trading, but now there also will be a special track on renewable gas certification, which will be co-organized. So you can here find the link. So thanks again for all your attention. And then, yes, let's stay in touch for future events. Have a good day.